What's up? What's up? What's up? Welcome to episode 25 of Domiciled, the podcast that explores the subculture of truck drivers as well as logistics professionals, bringing their stories to the masses. I'm your host, Scott Cleary, and before we kick things off, let's talk about our friends at Purple Squirrel every time. Purple Squirrel represents freight agents, freight brokerages, and freight forwarding companies. If you'd like to earn more, reduce your liability, and grow your career, you should have a chat with Ryan Smith over at Purple Squirrel about becoming an independent agent. They represent multiple broker and forwarding companies, allowing them to provide you with several career offers. You have options. Let them advocate on your behalf. Paul, buddy, I know you're traveling right now. You're West Coast way, right?
Yeah, I'm West Coast way this week, and then I'll be in Tucson next week, and then I'm going to be back.
Ooh, all right. To that point, I have not had the schedule you have. My dad came down as of time of recording, 4/29. Came down last Wednesday. My birthday was Sunday because, it's a birthday week. You got to anyway. He came down for a week. I'm down in Florida, as everybody knows. He's up in Massachusetts. It's actually his last full night here, so we've had a great time. Did a bunch of good stuff. Golf, lightning game. Hung out with my girlfriend and her daughter. Met his family a little bit. Hit a sweet cigar bar called Cathedral in Ybor City. Had some good food and just relaxed, and now we're back in the real world. So any highlights from your trip so far?
I'll hit you next episode. Although I will say
you're saving it all up for tonight. You're giving all your energy.
I was telling you earlier, I had a great call today with a customer, with a conduit customer that caught a stolen shipment with our software and was very, it was really cool. It's really cool to work on a product, sell a product that someone tells you, hey, it's the first place I went when something went wrong, right? And Beautiful. that's a really good feeling. And they actually recovered. So that's a big deal right now with all the fraud. So I'm sure we'll chat about that a little bit later. But no, great time so far. Nothing too big. Although I got to tell you, I'm racking up the air miles. Scott, you and I got to go to Cabo or something.
We will visit our guest down in Mexico way.
Yeah, there it is. But no, everything's rocking and rolling. Excited to talk to our guest today.
Absolutely. And to that point, we're actually going a bit off the reservation with this epi. So our next guest is the CEO of Freight Essentials, and getting a little ahead of ourselves here, but he does have some political aspirations down the road, wants to make some good change in the country, which we could always use. He's currently in the throes of a multi-party RICO lawsuit against Worldwide Express and Global Trans for, and I consulted a lawyer before saying this, alleged intent to defraud customers and business partners through anti-competitive acts. But my guy talks about this often on a lot of podcasts, so we figured we'd keep the mood light tonight. We're not going to go too crazy. He's going to give an update, whatever he wants to talk about, but then we're going to talk about some nonsense. So today he's going to give us, like I said, an update about what he's going on at time of recording, which, as I mentioned, is 4/29. But we're mostly going to spitball about health and fitness as it pertains to ourselves in the logistics driver industry. So without further ado, welcome to the show, Dylan Admire. How are we doing, man?
Thanks for having me, guys. I appreciate it, Scott. Appreciate it, Paul. And looking forward to kind of chatting a little bit about the lawsuits. But like you said, I'm pretty open and fair game. So whatever you guys want to chat about.
Yeah, absolutely. Super excited. So, Dylan, tell me, brokerage. I think everybody jokes about no one knows it exists, and then once you get in it, you never leave it, right?
Yes.
How'd you stumble into that?
Yeah, I've always said, I don't think anyone goes to high school or graduates high school, goes to college, like, I want to be a freight broker. But, it's honestly a great profession. I got into it in 2017. I was living in Kansas City at the time, and I worked for Freight Quote by C.H. Robinson was my first, experience in freight. Freight Quote had gotten purchased by C.H. Robinson back in the mid-2000s, so it was kind of a homegrown Kansas City brand. And then CH, which was based out of Minnesota, came and bought them. So that's where I worked. I did that for 3 years as a W-2 employee. I've said it before in other podcasts, nothing bad to say about C.H. Robinson. They had a great 8-week training program that I went through to really kind of learn the nuts and bolts of freight. And then they put you on the sales floor and, away you went. So that was really my first experience in sales. Won Rookie of the Year there and started to really get a taste of money. I'm a very competitive person. So after that, the spark was lit and way I was in the crazy game of the freight brokerage world. So I worked there for 3 years, had a good time. Figured I was not a good W-2 employee.
Why would that be?
I have a problem with authority sometimes. You got to be here at 8 a.m. You got to call these leads, do this and that. And I said, nothing bad against them. Learned what I need to know. And then went to Global Trans for 3.5 years. And, ultimately had a pretty good experience there, especially at the beginning. July 2021, they got acquired or through a levered buyout by Worldwide Express. And, after the years went on, had some issues. Unfortunately, departed there June 2nd, 2023, and got ourselves into some pretty nice lawsuits. And then worked for another agent model for about 10 months. And then now we have our own MC number and do everything on our own. So kind of seeing some different parts of the freight brokerage world, from a W-2 employee to, an agency relationship, or maybe more of a partnership relationship. And then, doing it completely on our own and negotiating all of our own rates, and, really learning all the different intricacies, of what it takes to be successful in this industry.
Yeah. I think listening to you talk about that, one of the things that comes to mind is everyone's kind of got a journey, and, I think it all starts with good training, and you're probably the 5th or 6th person I've ever talked to that said, CH and some of the larger brokerages, you really want to get an understanding, of what this is. If you're really green, a lot of those folks have really, really good training programs.
No, 100%. They invest a lot of time, energy, and resources. They hire great trainers, teaching you what a pallet is, what is a drive-in, what is a flatbed, all these things that, you have no idea. Maybe the only experience you have with a pallet is you went to Costco one time and you saw pallets on the racking. So I think it was vital. It was a good experience. Obviously, some people choose to do their entire careers at places like that. There's nothing wrong with that. Everyone has, different hopes and aspirations for their life. But I knew, rather quickly that was not going to be my final destination, but really more of a taking off point for me. And then we kind of expanded the horizons after that.
Yeah, that's really awesome. I think that a lot of times when you talk to folks, they're the folks that are really hungry to learn as much as possible.
Yep.
You get to a certain point and you're like, well, you don't leave somewhere because you want to leave. You leave because you're like, I really want to learn more than what I'm learning here. And sometimes maybe you're a little impatient. And I'm the same way, right? When some things where it's like, man, I really want to learn everything I can about what I'm doing here. Because there's so much more to it than just pallets and drive-ins, right?
100%, and even now I have no problem admitting it. I think you got to know what your strengths are, know what your weaknesses are, and you try to, fill in the gaps for your weaknesses. But there's still so much of the industry that I don't know. There's international shipping, container shipping, rail intricacies. And, I feel like I know what I'm good at and I kind of stay in that lane. But there's so many different aspects of the supply chain that, you can have a lifelong learning experience. And, as Scott said, I also want to get into the political sector at some point. Obviously, there's a new appointee to the DOT, but even now, those are typically appointed positions. And I really think, whether they have advisors underneath them or the person who's in that position really needs to have true experience in the trucking industry, whether that be from a driver or broker perspective, owning assets. Because, from my perspective, I played college football, and I think it's, incredibly hard to coach football if you've never played football. You just don't know what, it feels like on the AstroTurf in August during training camp. It's 140 degrees outside on the turf. Same thing for the trucking industry. If you're trying to sit at a 30 to 40,000 foot view and try to give instruction on what should be happening in the industry, it's almost impossible to put yourself in the shoes of drivers, brokers, customers, etc. if you've not had any of those experiences. So that's kind of an aspiration. Once I get on with all these lawsuits, once we continue to grow the current company, I would like to kind of, move into that, in the years to come.
Very cool.
That's awesome.
So you mentioned, except for Bill Belichick, the almost always, right? Bill's the only. Bill and Tom. Anyway, he's so handsome. Not Bill, Tom. Anyway, okay. So you played college ball. My brother played D2 up in New Hampshire, like edge guy, little middle outside linebacker. What position did you play?
Yeah, so I played at the University of Kansas. Speaking of Bill Belichick and Tom Brady, for part of my time there, I played for Charlie Weiss, which he was the former offensive coordinator at the New England Patriots.
Yeah,
I don't have a lot of positive things to say about him, unfortunately.
Well, he's not listening. Let's hear it.
You know,
I promise.
he was just not a player's coach, and obviously coming from an NFL, you know, and now college football landscape has drastically changed with the NIL and the open portal. But when I played, you know, ages ago, no, I'm kidding. I played from 2010 to 2014, but it was very different. There was not the NIL. You couldn't freely transfer. So for an NFL coach to come into the college setting, you know, they are very much more transactional based in college and professional football. You know, you can fire guys, you can cut guys, you can hire new people. And at that point in college, you really had 4 or 5 years to develop people, and you really needed to fully encompass developing someone, no different than, you know, developing a freight broker, whatever the case may be. It wasn't just this turn and burn model. And so it just wasn't necessarily a good fit at the time. But needless to say, I learned a lot of valuable life lessons I was able to take, you know, into my adulthood. But I played offensive line. I played center. So I snapped the ball to the quarterback, if, you know, people don't know much about football. And so I did that for 4 or 5 years. I was a little bit chubbier in those days, you know, lots of Domino's pizzas and dessert and stuff. But no, it was a good time. And when I got done playing college football, I originally got into exercise science and strength conditioning. So I was a strength conditioning coach for several years because, you know, that's the only negative I would say about college sports, at least from my experience, is you are only surrounded in that environment. So, you know, your perception of what you want to do after that is very narrow, not for everyone, but at least for me. And so, you know, I loved training. I loved working out. I didn't love the football aspect so much, but, you know, it was still a decent time. So once I got done playing, I had trained college and professional athletes for several years. And it wasn't until I kind of, you know, got out of that whole realm that I figured there was something else I wanted to do. And that just so happened to be freight. So.
There you go. And so I think a lot of like sales people, freight people are former athletes. Like we're just itching for that, any type of competition. Like I took a few days off, right? Cause my dad was down for my birthday, still is. Yeah. He's actually watching Silicon Valley right now. We just like when we're in our downtime, we just started that show. We've just been binging it. It's like, it's hilarious for anybody who doesn't watch it. Digress. So I had kind of like the Sunday scaries getting back into work. But as soon as I had like a couple good calls today, found out some I might getting close to closing some deals, and like you're all fired up again. It's like the only thing we've got left, that and getting in the gym, you know, crushing some weights. And some of the stuff you said reminded me a bit about my younger brother. He's 24 again, played D2 up in New Hampshire. He's about my build. Like we're, you know, shaped a little bit differently. But like I'm like 6'1", like 215.
Hockey players.
Right. So just different. But he was
builds.
Yeah. What do you beautiful builds. Anyway, so he is about my height, a little more slender, but he got up to he likes to tell stories a little bit. He was pushing like 270-ish, and now he eats like eggs, steak, and like breathes over butter, and that's about it. And he's
carnivore diet.
Yeah, the crazy shit. I'm like, buddy, track your macros. Anyway, he's at like 195 right now. So like you said, if you're playing center, you know, we're looking shoulders up, but we both know you're a pretty fit guy. Paul and I are both big into fitness as well. You know, what got you, like, I guess, what was like the playing weight? Where do you like to sit now? And second follow-up question, what leg exercise makes you want to call your mom for a pep talk after, like, I just need a hug?
So when I when I was playing, I fluxed between like 285 and 300.
Dude, how tall are you?
I'm 6'4", so I'm decently small.
There it is.
He's small, he says. All right.
Yes. I mean, compared to like offensive tackles, I'm like tiny. They're like 6'8", 6'9" now, you know, Roman goddesses over here. But yeah, so I played around 285 to 300 pounds. When I got done playing, I did not like being that heavy.
Mm-hmm. That's kind of what
I got down to about 200, 205. And then that was too skinny. You know, at that point I was running like 5Ks and 10Ks, and you know, I got into this like running fix for a while. Now
nobody likes those people.
No, and you know, it was a good time. I won 5Ks and you know, I did my thing, but you know, that's when I really got back into weightlifting and training. So then over the years I started to put on weight. I started to, you know, change my diet. You know, do if it fits in your macros, you know, more protein, more carbohydrates, different types of training, different types of cardio. And so I've gotten all the way up to like 310 again, dieted back down. I've done bodybuilding competitions. So I've really, you know, put my body and tested through a lot of different things. So now I sit like around 280, 290, but in much different shape than I was then. I actually own a gym as well. So
okay.
I can train there, and I hand selected all the equipment. So I'm like an equipment nerd per se.
Oh, yeah.
I got questions about that.
We're going to go down a rabbit hole.
I love, all sorts of different type of equipment, going to different gyms when I travel. I've been over to Europe, down to Mexico, all over the world, getting to see different types of gyms, from hole in the walls to some of the most immaculate gyms like over in Italy filled with Panada equipment. But as far as my favorite leg exercise, I'd probably have to say hacks.
That's how you know. That's how you know he's a true lifter. When I'm like, which one makes you want to cry to mom? He's like, so my favorite.
Yes.
Because it's one and the same. It's one and the same.
It's the same
my favorite's probably hack squats, especially if you have like some good training partners with you and you can truly go to failure.
You need one. It's way different with a partner. I don't have
100%. Like, I travel a lot now, going to customer visits or going to conferences. So I still train, but training by yourself is not a lot of fun. So I said, luckily I own a gym. I have some great guys at the gym I train with every night. So that's probably my favorite. Many people who've trained legs with me, if they don't throw up the first time, I'm a little disappointed in myself that we weren't able to push them hard enough. But I love training. I think there's a lot of life lessons you can take from it. Persistency, the consistency, the discipline with like the diet, the training, and then if you can extrapolate that and take it into your other, sectors of life, whether that be your relationship, your marriage, spending time with your kids, your business. I think it's a huge thing that you can really take into multiple things in life. So I've always loved it. It's something that's there no matter what. So whether you're having a good day, a bad day, you broke up with your girlfriend, you had whatever it is, the 45-pound plate's still the 45-pound plate, whether you like it or not. So
Dylan, I love that. I love that you said hack squat. That's I jokingly, Scott knows, I call it the altar because you can go to dark places there for sure.
Yes.
And it's pretty versatile in the sense that it's probably the only thing you can really go knees over toes and really not be as concerned, right? Scott's more of a free, he likes to do a traditional squat. He's big.
I love a hack squat. I do love a hack squat.
Know.
Yeah, I introduced you to hack squat, didn't I?
Yeah. Well, I had done them before, but we were at the gym and you were really excited about that specific. You're like, that's what we have to do today.
Yeah,
you had that look in your eye.
I bought one recently for the gym. If you're familiar with the Arsenal brand,
yes,
they're out of Tennessee, so I got the Arsenal pendulum squat.
The pendulum we swing. You're here
down into it. And then you can change the foot platform. So if it's up more, it's more quad dominant. If it's down more, it's more glutes and hamstrings. But that one, there's like zero cheating. On some of the other hack squats, you can like maybe put, the weight placement in your toes versus your heels.
You can arch. Yeah.
But with the pendulum squat or the swing squat, there is nothing.
No, there's no way out of it. It's just pain.
You get to about 2-3 plates on that thing and it's done for. Like you were saying, Paul, like, I like a lot of the barbell stuff. I don't do it much anymore because especially with barbell stuff, if you get into bodybuilding, you can really use a lot of different muscle groups to kind of cheat your way through it. So I was getting to a point I could barbell squat 5-6 plates for sets of 10. I have some videos from like 2018, 2019, just doing some stupid shit. And, I was doing the chiropractor every week, get my back adjusted, neck adjusted, hips adjusted. And once I ditched the barbell, I also tore my pec in like 2017, I think, doing barbell incline. So once I kind of like greatly reduced the weight and stopped maybe ego lifting, I mean, I still had good technique, but it was more ballistic, like when I played sports. Once I ditched that and started doing more machines with slower tempo, really focusing on form and contractions, I got way bigger from a physique standpoint, like look wise. And it was also way safer. So now if I travel, and I hop off a plane, maybe I'm not perfectly hydrated. My eating wasn't great, which we could correlate to like truck drivers. They're over the road most of the day. They're sitting. Maybe they didn't have all their meals, or maybe they couldn't get all the water in, but they still want to hit up a Planet Fitness or 24-hour fitness, going a little bit lighter on the weight, focusing on the technique, but still being able to get a good workout in, I think is hugely important. Something that I've had to adopt, as I'm, like you, racking up the flyer miles, going all over the place. So I think it's knowing your situation, and being able to react accordingly, whether that's in the gym and life and business.
Yeah. I love the way you wrap that up at the end. You mentioned, going light and technique and, switching away from, going more isolated, it sounds like, right. To really go for what you're going for. And, I was actually joking with Scott. Scott, I think he sent you a picture. I actually recently worked out with my old man.
His dad's big.
Yeah, big guy. And it's so funny to lift with guys that like, especially, I'm maybe 3 years into this, right?
Yeah.
To lift with folks that like, everyone around our age in the 30s, right? They're all like, it's all that science-based lifting. And then it's funny how it comes full circle and I'm watching my old man lift and he's like pulling it up and he's coming all the way up to here. And
his arms are
going
like
down just old school and his arms are massive. I'm like, what are you curling? He goes, oh, I don't curl anything more than a 20. It's a waste.
Yeah.
And it's like that mentality of just like, well, what's the point? He goes, you just go do it. Yes. Right. And it's like, stop focusing on how much you put up. Right. And it's funny you mentioned that, bringing around to drivers and things like that, or business in general, because I think consistency is the toughest part. Right. And yes. You mentioned like a lot of lessons. Right. One of the ones that stands out to me, I'm curious about what you two think, is it's just doing something you don't want to do. Like the amount of times Scott and I have texted each other at 6 o'clock in the morning and he's like, I don't want to go today. And I'm like, legs. Do legs today. You're gonna do legs, and it's just me over and over again texting him going legs, all caps.
That was last week. That was funny.
But
I might just do arms and delts again. He's like, legs, you bitch, legs. I'm like, all right.
Okay, I was gonna leave that part out, but no, it's really, I mean, everything in life is about doing what you don't want to do. And there's a lot of stuff you don't want to do.
I talk about all the time, like doing the hard stuff, so for me, I typically train at night. I'm a big fan of cardio. So I do cardio every morning fasted. I don't think I've missed it in like 7 years. And I train at night. So whether I've been in meetings or with the legal stuff or, visiting customers, it comes like 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 o'clock. And now it's time to go to the gym. So it's like, there's a lot of days. It's a huge mental test. Well, I could skip today. I could take a nap. It's like, no, I need to go do this. And I think the interesting thing about the gym and with fitness is you never feel worse after you're done. You might feel more sore, but you're never like, fuck, I wish I would not have done that.
Shouldn't have gone.
Yeah. I think someone said it goes over to type 3 fun.
Yes.
It's, is it there's different types of fun. Type 3's fun. Type 3 fun is where you're almost like, oh, we could have died. Right. You're laughing. It's like the best way it was described to me is when you see a video on the internet, some construction guys, something falls and you hear that guy in the back go, like that. That laugh. We all know what it means. I feel like that's what the gym is. It's that one level of fun of like, yeah, it sucked while I was there, but man, did you see me put that up? Right. Like there's a lot of fun in that.
Well, I think too, a lot of the stuff that's, going to come out in the next few years. And, I bought one recently is like the cold tubs and the saunas and it's all just doing stuff that you don't want to do. So like, I mean, I look forward now to getting into 45-degree water every morning after I get done with cardio. But like for so many people, it's a mental block, being able to sit there for 3.5 minutes. And it's like, I'm a big person, like morning routines. I'm not saying you got to do it at 5 a.m. You don't got to be like Jocko and, 4:30 a.m. I'm up ready to go. But whatever it is that, I'm a big night owl. So maybe my day starts differently than your day starts. But, getting up, brushing your teeth, doing the cardio, getting in the cold bath, getting in the sauna, just doing a bunch of stuff that you don't necessarily want to do. And you start racking up these wins in your mind. Then you take that in, let's say you're in sales and you start cold calling. You're going to make 100 cold calls a day. And you're chasing, as you said, Scott, as a former athlete, like that high. It's like, okay, you have one good call and now you're good for 30 calls. And then you have another one, and then, okay, this deal's getting closer. This deal's getting closer. So I think ultimately it's all about doing the hard stuff, and maybe what's hard for me is different than what's hard for you and what's hard for the next person. But if you can start to do those hard things every day, and that might be, walking 10 minutes, that might be hard for someone. Maybe running an hour for David Goggins is, it's like everybody's different. So, but whatever it is for you, if you can just actively do those hard things, they become easier. And then your level of threshold just continues to go up over time.
Yeah, and no one cares either. Like if you're I was talking to someone the other day, they're like, oh, I don't want to go to the gym. People are going to judge me. I was like, if you're doing like 20 pounds, no one's going to judge you if you're doing it. They're going to be like, look at that guy go, right? Or look at that girl. Good for you, right? Like everybody's got a voice in your head. And I think that also goes over to what we're talking about with, in business and life and things is no one cares. Like you just do it, and who cares if someone does or doesn't like it? If you've got to storm the mountain, storm it, even if you look like an idiot.
Well, even if they do, I mean, I think it's a big thing to be able to build confidence. So maybe someone does care. Maybe someone is a low life and is talking shit on you for whatever reason. But it's going to be no different in business, you know. So when we were at Global Trans, I'm doing 30 plus million. And then with our own MC doing 25, 30 million within the first year. Well, okay, that might be great to me, but there's companies doing billions. So if I try to compare myself to them and, well, I'm only doing 30 million and some other company's doing 300, you know.
Humble brag.
You know, being able to be confident in what you're doing, you know, and so I think, you know, like I said, there's so many lessons that can be learned, or so many analogies that you can pull from the gym. So I think even if you are a little worried that someone might be talking shit or, you know, staring at you because you're a little overweight or obese or whatever it is, being able to tackle that fear, then you can go take that and extrapolate that into business, and, you know, it's going to be somewhat the same.
Or you can be like me and just wave like an idiot. I love to do that when people say,
nobody looks at me.
You want to be friends? And they're like, oh, I don't want to look at that guy. And then you go back to what you're doing.
Yeah. So to jump off, you know, Paul and Dylan's point there. So for me, it was like realizing I could conquer things. So I was, through college, I was an athlete, you know, club hockey, but we're not going to talk about that. But I was pretty fit through my senior year. And then I moved to Florida. I'm like, oh, I'm just going to get jacked. And there's just going to be chicks everywhere. I'm just going to wake up and there's just going to be 10s surrounding me. There'll be a bunch of 10s pass out on the ground because an 8 beat the crap out of all of them just to get to me. So I knew Paul would like that one. That was for you, Paulie. So it's such a good reference. Perfect timing. Anyway, so instead I gained like 40 pounds. Yeah, right. So I went from about probably like 210-ish to like 250 over the span of like 7-8 years, just slowly eating myself into a size 40 waist. From like a very, very shredded six pack in senior year of college to that. And it was like, and I was just like, oh, I'm just a big guy, you know, I'm a big guy, I hold the weight, you make all the excuses. And then, so for me, like, I couldn't even fathom the concept of like, what's losing 5 pounds? Like, how do you know what to eat to lose? I just didn't get it, because like most athletes, you just eat and you're young and you're active. So it's just gone. Plus you get the newbie gains. So when I was able to go through that and go through several, to your, like you said, Dylan, several cut and growth phases to rebuild myself, you know, it's 4 years as a natural athlete, like 4 years. And I'm just at the point where like everything about me physically, I'm like, cool, like we're there. And it does take that much work. But when it came to stuff like starting this podcast or doing hard things at work, to your point, it's just, you realize like I did this thing I thought was not possible. Like I literally transformed my body. I can sell this deal, or I can you know, I can sell this deal. I can start this podcast. I can this job that scares me. I can do that. Maybe you fall on your face, but it's like, again, nobody cares, right? So what? We talked about hacks quite a bit. I know we're going a little shorter than usual today, but let's talk about a couple others that you really love for the people at home, maybe specifically drivers, right? Maybe there's some drivers out there like, I really don't know what to do. Maybe we can brainstorm a couple things we think would be really good for folks who are locked in a truck. Yeah. And then we'll go from there. Maybe a couple broker stories from your time as a broker.
Yeah. So I mean, I think for like drivers, I mean, obviously they're over the road a lot, and if you could plan to try to stop in cities that had some sort of gym, now with like Google Earth, you can, you know, Google Maps, you can look at all that stuff. When I travel a lot, you know, once I land in a city, I just type in gym and, you know, they pop up. But, you know, for some reason you couldn't. I think doing cardio is so important from a heart health standpoint, from food digestion, you know, and it doesn't have to be crazy. You don't have to be out there running, you know, especially if you're first starting, you know, walking, get an iWatch, get a heart rate monitor, you know, get your heart rate between 115, 140 beats a second. That's where like that optimal fat burning zone. I've seen many drivers on like Instagram or YouTube using TRX bands that they can hook to their truck, you know, so you can do a lot of different stuff with that.
Those resistance bands?
So the TRX, they like hang, and then they have two handles, so you can do like different forms of like push-ups, pull-ups, presses.
Yeah, like the one you put in your door frame.
Yeah.
Okay, there we go.
But then you can get the resistance bands. You know, I was on the Lombard trucking podcast a while back. You know,
it's our boy.
He would carry dumbbells with him, or now they have like the interchangeable dumbbells, so you go like 5 to 50.
I had those. Yep.
There's so many different options. from, just simplistic workout stuff. Now with YouTube and the internet, there's almost an information overload sometimes, which makes it challenging for people. But so many different things that you could do just with the confines of your own truck. I've seen some funny stuff on like TikTok and YouTube of truck drivers like putting ice baths in their trucks, like the inflatable ice baths and stuff.
I have one, so what's my excuse? Jeez.
Shame.
Got to do it. Got to buy a hose.
Well, the best is if you want to drop the coin and get one. So I bought one recently. It's called the Cold Life. One of my buddies, Sam's, owns it down in Miami. And so it's like one that has the regulator on it, and it's all American made. And so that way it goes from like 35 to 55 degrees. That's like Gary Brecka uses them, and John Jones, several people in the UFC, Dana White, all rep the Cold Life brand. But those plunge, there's a bunch of others. But I mean, they're like $6,000-7,000. But if you think about actually, buying the ice every day and spending $15-20 on ice, and you extrapolate that across a year, okay, sure. It makes sense. But back to the truck driving. So there's a lot of stuff that you can do, in the confines of that. And then the biggest thing is eating healthy, because you cannot out train a bad diet. That was the biggest thing. Once I got done playing football, as you mentioned, Scott, like as you get older, your diet becomes more and more important. And they always say abs are made in the kitchen, that's saying, and it's 100% true. So I think 10, 15, 20 years ago, it was insanely harder to eat healthy unless you would have been, buying all your stuff, packing it, having a grill on the side of the truck or something. But now there's so many convenient options, so many ready to go protein shakes, healthy snacks. You stop at most of these truck stops, they have like ready to eat options, whether it be hard boiled eggs or chicken breasts or salads or protein shakes. So now it's almost, you're just making excuses if you're not eating healthy. There's so many fast food places, grocery stores, that you can go buy stuff. So when I travel a lot, I use Instacart. So if I'm staying in an Airbnb or a hotel, you can literally have food, brought to you. So lots of different options now to eat healthy. You just have to want to, and that needs to be a priority. And I think that's anything in life. If it's a priority, you'll make it happen. So if it's a priority to make money, you're going to make money. If it's a priority to be a great parent, you're going to be a great parent. If it's not a priority to you, then you probably won't do very well at it. So I just think you have to make it a priority, and you have to decide, okay, I'm going to do this every day. And, you can make it possible.
100%. And one little piece. Yeah, one little piece off that as well is priority is for anybody who might be listening, figuring out how to start, right? It doesn't have to be all or nothing either. That doesn't mean you can never eat a pizza again. You can never have cake again. Believe me, this week is testament to that for me. But the point is, it's got to be consistent. Like you said, a priority doesn't mean all the time. It just means most of the time. So again, no one's out there saying like, hey, if it's all the time, every day, like, no, it's like more often than not, you have to take the walk. You have to get that heart rate up. You have to eat the good food, prep that good food. And if Saturday you want to have a burger because it's Saturday and that's your thing, hey, go for it. But again, you can't outwork a bad diet. Dylan Admire on that one. Quote it, throw it up there. You said that first, right?
Trademark
it. Dylan, you didn't say like calisthenics or anything. I think there's a lot of guys that, body weight exercise, you can get so far.
Yeah, I started
from like a strength, maybe not size. I'm not an expert on that, but it does seem like the difference you can make from getting from, oh man, I can do 5 push-ups, I can do 20, I can do 30, I can do 2 sets of 30. Maybe I can do 60, right? Maybe I can do 90, right? You start to get up there. There's a big difference in just how you feel doing that.
100%.
Plus, if you're heavy, you have the weight to move. You already got the weight to move.
You already got it.
It's there. Use it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, yeah, Scott, you experienced that because you dropped quite a bit of weight.
I did about 40 pounds or so. I started out with body weight, and I started with those Bowflex weights you were talking about as well, Dylan. Like I told my coach, I'm like, look, I want to make sure I commit to this. So for 3 months, I was losing plenty of weight because of the diet. Just making sure that I stuck to that, was in my sunroom doing walking lunges back and forth. Again, the Select Tech weights, had a little bench, and that's all I had for 3 months. So, again, you can do it in a truck. And, again, my life is much easier than a truck driver, even when I was just working out at home without a gym. But the point is, you can do it if you want to.
Absolutely.
No, 100%. Like I said, there's so many different ways you can skin a cat, per se, and especially if you're not trying to be some huge jack person. Like there's so many ways you can go about doing it. Like you said, from calisthenics to body weight stuff to bands, to TRXs, to kettlebells, to weights, and maybe 2-3 days a week, you plan your route so you can stop at a gym for an hour. And that's the other big misconception. I own the gym and I'll go in and people will be there for like 3-4 hours. And even when I've done bodybuilding shows, I mean, you might be doing 2 or 3 hours of cardio just because you got to lose, all this fat, but I'll only train with weights for an hour. So like, you don't need to go in there and be a slave to the weight per se and be there for 2-3 hours. Get in, work hard, get a training partner, go back and forth, and then leave, because where you're going to make all your gains per se is outside the gym with your rest, your recovery, your proper nutrition, your hydration. So
carbs. Get them baked potatoes going, man.
But yeah, so no, I think there's a lot of options for people now. You just have to want to do it. And there's several people in the trucking space, because my aunt and uncle were truck drivers years ago. They ran as a team, and they had the massive jugs of soda and just were not healthy. And that was kind of the norm in the trucking industry. And so luckily, you have a lot of people talking about it from podcasts. Like I said, Lombard with Lombard Trucking, he started running when he was doing it. And so I think there's a lot more awareness now. And I'm sure there's still, people who are unhealthy. There's always going to be that. You look at any subset of society. But I think it's more well known now. And I think, honestly, after COVID, that really brought a lot of awareness to people, because you saw some people who, were greatly affected by COVID. Of course, there was healthy individuals, but there was a lot of people who were not healthy, who had long hauler syndrome, who unfortunately passed away or had family members pass away. So I think it brought it to the forefront of a lot of people's minds of like, man, being healthy is no joke. And, the healthier you are, the better you're going to have to be able to fight a disease like that. So I think it's at least made people more aware than maybe they were prior.
100%, man. 100%. So before we wrap it, let's hear off the dome 2 just unbelievable stories when you're a freight broker, whether it's unbelievable to freight brokers who heard it, or maybe, you want to go like PG-13 and it's to a layman or woman who hasn't been in the industry. Just stuff is just like, wow.
Probably one of the crazier stories from a truck perspective was one of the drivers when I think I was C.H. Robinson or Global Trans, I don't remember, but the guy got caught smoking weed and flipped over his truck, ended up killing someone. And then the truck caught on fire. And the customer was like $150,000 load. They had no insurance on it. And so then it got taken into a tow yard in Arizona, and there had to be a police investigation. And then months later, they opened up the trailer and they said, oh, the product's still good because the fire hadn't affected the trailer. And it had been out in the desert heat, and this protein was rancid.
Oh, it was protein? Yeah, no way.
Yeah, it was tubs of protein powder, So that was probably the worst. I've had some cargo theft issues and stuff, but as you mentioned, Paul, that's unfortunately very common practice now. So telling a story like that isn't too crazy. But yeah, no, that was a pretty bad situation. So that's probably the craziest incident I've had. Probably the other biggest or craziest thing was obviously what happened with us at Global Trans.
Sure.
And a lot of agents or people who've been in the industry would understand that. When I started there in January 2020 after leaving CH, didn't have, I had a few customers, but started there, became their number 1 agent within 3 years, would have done 40+ million in 2023. And then
that's why he's got the good cold tub.
Exactly. Going through all that and, uncovering all of the fraud and fraudulent activity and behavior they were doing. And like I said, at first we thought it was just happening to us. Maybe, they don't like us. I'm a bit outspoken because I'm a very outspoken individual, if you can't tell. And we were speaking up to things that we were seeing, and then ultimately seeing that it was happening to hundreds of other people. This wasn't just an issue with us. This was systematic fraud. So we filed our first lawsuit in September 2023 in state court in Texas. And then as we continued to learn more and found out this was not just something targeted against us, it was systematic fraud. allegedly, I'll say that for you, Scott, that we filed a federal RICO lawsuit in December of 2024. So now we're at the stage of doing depositions and doing all that kind of stuff. So that has been a massive learning experience. I believe in life, you go through hardships. Sometimes you might be asking, why is this happening to me? And that can be anything. There's a death in the family, your significant other leaves you, a kid passes away, whatever tragic thing it is to you, you might be asking, why is this happening to me right now? But whether you're faithful or not, at least for me, I believe everything happens for a reason and God has a plan for you. And so you need to learn some sort of lesson, whether it's a bit of a humility, whether it's, learning something about running a business, or can you rebuild the business? I've talked about before not being a one-hit wonder, and in sales positions, they talk about that a lot. It's one thing to have one good week, one good month, one good quarter, one good year, but can you do it again and again and again? And so for me, that was really the biggest test was, okay, I built up this giant business, and obviously we're in litigation. That'll all work itself out. But okay, now I need to do it again. So I had to get back in the saddle. I had to start selling. I had to start going to conferences. So that's a bit more of a long-winded answer, but that's probably been, at least personally, the craziest thing that's happened with us. But ultimately, it's been a great learning experience. I learned, I joke now, I feel like I have gone to law school 10 times over. I at least paid for it. So learning all of the legalities, learning the importance of contracts, how to read certain stuff, the importance of having good lawyers on your team. And so, to me, it's been a great learning experience that as I continue to do other businesses, definitely things that I'll know that if you hadn't been through that experience, and I think you could say that about anything in life, experiences build, your foundation. And so now when I go into the next thing and the next thing, I'll know exactly what I want, what I'm looking for, what I don't want, etc.
Mm-hmm.
Beautiful.
I love it.
You just tied the whole episode together right there.
Exactly. Little update. I've been on some of the podcasts, like Freight Caviar, which was a great one. We went super in depth, like 2 hours, with Tom and I about the whole lawsuit. And, here as we have some more updates here in the coming months, there's going to be some new enlightening things to come out. I'll go through and do more podcasts talking about that because it'll be slightly different, but I've talked so much about it. I'm glad this podcast we're able to talk more, about health, fitness, life, and hopefully people
hack squats.
Take something away from it.
There we go, man. No, so we wanted to give you a little bit of a break. People have told us that, hey, we think you guys have fun on there. That's what it looks like. So we figured we'd give you a little repreve too. So I'm happy that you felt you got that. So it was an absolute pleasure, man. We'll have to do it again sometime. Talk about, maybe we'll talk about our favorite chest exercises. I don't know. But anyway,
remember, Scott, you've got to stick with legs. You got to stop doing these other exercises because you don't want to do that.
I do like legs. So much legs.
We're doing legs.
So many legs.
For leg day, you only need like 3 or 4, and most people look at me like I'm crazy. Like I trained legs last night. I did like seated hamstring curls, lying hamstring curls. The Nautilus hip thrust machine, I have one of those in my gym, which is great. And then we did a belt squat, and it was like hour, 15 minutes, heavy, hard, intense. And I think, you don't need to do 6, 7, 8, 9 different exercises with 5, 6 sets apiece.
Keep it simple.
Yeah, keep it simple. The whole KISS thing. Keep it simple.
Yeah, stupid. KISS it. Exactly.
Yep. Last question for you. When you do the hip thrust, do you pick somebody in the gym to just make eye contact with the whole time?
My hip thrust is kind of in the corner, and when I train, I close my eyes so I can focus. So I do not. But the best machine to make awkward eye contact with, especially in a public gym, is when you do the adductor or abductor machine.
The good girls, bad girls. Yeah.
Especially in public gyms, it's the best because as a guy, people looking at you like you're fucked up. Yeah. Like, why are you doing this machine? So you just kind of smile at them, give them a nice.
All the muscles count.
Yes. Oh, I like to wave, Dylan. I'm a big guy. If someone's staring, I just like to go.
That's hilarious.
You just do it because you know what? The most disarming thing you could do to an angry person is go, "Hey."
Yes.
How are you?
It feels so awkward. Like,
no, more awkward.
I think people who are judgmental in the gym is
they stink.
They deserve a special place in hell, I guess. But
somewhere. Yeah.
I don't get it. You know, everybody starts somewhere, and everyone has their own method of madness. And even if you don't agree with their method of madness, well, you know, it's not up to you. So,
well, I think that's the name for today's method to the madness. I think that's
method to the madness. I was gonna go with like peace, love, hack squats, but that's fine.
Oh, that's better. Actually, I take that back. That sounds like a really good book.
Peace, love,
hack. Or no, that book.
It was like freight. No, like bullshit. Anyway, we'll figure it out. But I'm just gonna write down hack squats.
Hey, Dylan, thanks so much for joining us, man.
Yeah, thanks so much. Absolutely, and hey, to everyone listening, please be sure to check us out every other Tuesday at What's Domiciled on YouTube and Spotify for the full-length episodes, and YouTube and Instagram for the reels. I'm actually a little behind on the YouTube. Anyways, we really appreciate you for tuning in. Thank you for your support. Like, comment, subscribe. Have a great day.